I will take a few moments to talk about what we've been up to the last year, and but more importantly, what we are up to next year, or the coming year, so to say. And I will also talk about today, what you can expect today. You've probably also seen the program, but there's a few things I'd like to announce. That gives me a good opportunity to ask a very simple question. Who was here last year? Okay, that's very nice. Thanks for coming back, but it's also very nice to see that a lot of people did not raise their hands. That means they're new, they're first comers here. And of course, I hope you'll have a great day. So let's start with yesterday. And it felt, when I was preparing this, it felt a bit like I was doing the typical Dutch way of doing the weather forecast. If you watch the weather forecast, more than half of the time they spend is actually on today's weather. And you might wonder, why the hell do you want to talk about today's weather? And actually, what they do that because if you say tomorrow is going to be 22 degrees and slightly rainy, most people don't really have a feeling for that. If you say today it was 12 degrees and tomorrow it's going to be 20, then people are, it's going to be a lot warmer tomorrow than it is today. That's a good thing. So I guess I need to do that as well then. But my yesterday is not really yesterday, or it's not really today, it's about last year. I want to talk about the stuff that we've been up to since the last conference, and maybe slightly the moment before. So last year I was quite proud to announce that we crossed the 1 million downloads barrier. I don't want to give everything a rate right now, but that's a laugh right now, which is really nice. But what we also discovered is when talking to customers or prospects or just users of the framework, as we come across them, and sometimes we accidentally find them, and sometimes they do presentations in public around what they've been working on, we've noticed that there's not a lot of things in life you can do without somehow generating an event that flows through an Axon system. And that's pretty scary to some extent, but also pretty exciting. If you buy a new car, depending on the brand, there's a couple of brands that if you buy one of those, there's lots of Axon events coming. Well, not your way, but through our systems. And it's not only new cars. If you buy a second-hand car, big chances by just finding and searching them that you will also have a few Axon events. If you get your driver's license in the Netherlands, anyone recently got their driver's license here? No, old people. No. And young people from abroad, of course. But you know, there's going to be events as well. If you do your groceries, right? If you go to a shop, and there are certain shops where you do your groceries either online or offline, and it's not only the food, but it's also hard to buy furniture without generating Axon events, or even flowers. If you get your items shipped, big chances again, etc., etc. So all these aspects, and even if you're not going outside of your house, probably your house, well, not probably, if you live in the Netherlands, definitely your house is represented, or the fact that you own your house is represented by events. We'll see a talk of the Kadaster today. The power grids providing power to your house are somehow managed by events, etc., etc. And this is, my personal favorite. If you fly, you generate Axon events. So there's not only bad things about flying, there's also some cool aspects. And it's not just because some of Axon's code has been built inside aircrafts. Thanks, Ben, for taking this beautiful picture of me in my favorite working position. If you want to know, I've got a picture of Ben. His position was way worse because the gentleman in front of him decided to pull back his seat. So the cool thing is Axon is everywhere. And I guess that's fine. That's a good thing, right? But it's starting to really become something, and that's very exciting, and it gives us a feeling of purpose and pride, and well, all the things that we saw earlier, which is pretty exciting. And of course, we want to share that excitement with you. So by now, the framework has over 100 contributors. I think somewhere around 110. You can check that on GitHub yourself. We also found that more than 500 other libraries in GitHub have a dependency on Axon. And some of those are quite well-known other frameworks, some Apache frameworks and things like that. So apparently the stuff that we've been working on is relevant to people that we never really targeted the framework for. And, well, I gave it away already. We now crossed the 2.5 million downloads. And just to put that in perspective, last year we had 1 million downloads. Axon Framework is 10 years old. That means that last year we had, well, not almost double, let's say 150%. In the last year we had more downloads than in the 9 years before. That means there's something going on, right? This relevance of event-driven, whether it's microservices or event-driven monoliths. To be honest, I don't care. I'd rather have a monolith because it's easy, in many senses easier to maintain. But there's some need out there for, apparently, for something that Axon provides. So another thing that happened the last couple of years is people, and I keep them anonymous for their safety. Well, mostly mine, to be honest. People ask me, have you ever considered writing a book? Well, yeah, I considered. Well, you should really write a book about this stuff. Okay, yeah. That sounds like a good idea. So when can we expect this book? Exactly 1 year ago, I was at a conference in Denver for a talk, and it was a DDD conference. And I had breakfast with Paul Rayner. He's the organizer of that conference, and he said, well, this is really nice stuff that you're talking about. You should write a book about this. Oh, God, no. You're starting as well? I said, well, you know, I'm not a natural writer, so this stuff takes a lot of time for me to get my head around, and I really have to get at peace and start writing about this stuff. So, okay, he understood. And that same afternoon, after giving my presentation, Eric Evans approached me. And he said, hey, that was interesting. Have you ever considered writing this stuff down? I didn't know what to do. Should I run away and leave him there wondering, why did that guy run away? And so I explained him, and he said, well, it doesn't have to be, a book. You can write a white paper. Maybe? Well, for me, it doesn't matter. A book or a white paper, that's an infinite amount of writing to do. So that's why I want to publicly announce that I have the intent not to write a book. Yet. Fortunately, because of those millions of downloads, I have found a better way. You can have others write a book. And they've been doing that. So this is one that you might have seen. It's not extremely new, but at a certain section, they start to talk about Axon quite a lot. It doesn't mention it on the title, unfortunately, but I guess that's okay. Very recently, I think last month, a book appeared, Practical Microservices Architectural Patterns. The title does not quite mention Axon yet, but it does have my name on it. Yes, I managed to write 1 page, and it got me on the cover of a book, so why should I write any more, right? But it gets better, and well, there's an unfortunate, bitter taste to this. The author of this book had registered for the event. He was supposed to be here. Unfortunately, his father turned sick, and he had to fly back. I think he spent around maybe a few hours in the Netherlands, and then he had to take his plane back for 10 hours to go back to the US. But Vijay's book appeared just a few weeks ago, and it does mention Axon on the title. So it's getting better, right? Books about Axon are appearing. So fortunately, the community does not depend on me anymore to be a writer, right? So maybe that yet, I can just remove it and just say not. I'd rather build Axon than to write a book about it. So on another thing we announced last year, that was our exciting announcement, is the fact that we merged AxonDB and Axon Hub. Who has never heard of AxonDB and Axon Hub? Just a few. Good. Forget about it. You're the happy few that haven't been bothered by that concept, because it's removed. They have been merged into Axon Server, and we decided to make part of Axon Server some sort of a community edition or standard edition, open source. And that's what we've been working on right after the conference. By now it's published, and we have several versions published after that. So the 4.0 release contained this merger of AxonDB and Axon Hub into Axon Server. If you don't know what Axon Server is, there's a workshop this afternoon. You can play around with it and get a feel of what kind of impact it can have on your microservices or monolithic deployment. We also did a pretty big module restructuring of the Axon modules themselves. And the main reason for that was the framework being used by other libraries, and they didn't want to pull in everything. They just wanted to pull in the messaging part, or the event sourcing part, or the modeling part. So that makes it much easier to pick certain elements that you care about and remove the elements that you don't care about, so that you can get leaner jar files. There's a lot of usability improvements. Of course, if you go from a 3.x to a 4.x, you have the ability to make breaking changes. So we did some improvements on the usability of both the framework and the server. And in 4.1, we added multi-context support. There's this dynamic split and merge, which is a rather technical thing. I'd like to talk for the entire talk about it, but I wasn't allowed to. And we added micrometer support. So all little things were added. That was really nice if you cared about those items. And then in 4.2, we added things like location awareness. If you have multi-data center deployments, we have much better support now to make sure that the connections between applications and the Axon Server instances in your cluster take into account the actual location of servers, right? So that the connections in the applications in one data center will not try to connect to an Axon Server node in another data center just to route messages back through another channel to the one data center again. There's some improved observability, right? Better ways to look at how your applications are behaving when interacting with Axon Server, or even without Axon Server. Even from the framework, there's better ways to see what your application is doing. That is very useful, especially after the last conference, when you have a keynote of somebody who's promoting chaos engineering. So if you want to invoke chaos on your environment, you better measure what you're doing. Otherwise, you're just randomly destroying stuff, which is not chaos engineering, I've heard. So the tomorrow, what is the things we can expect beyond Axon 4.2? What are the things that we are working on right now? Well, we were working on yesterday, and we will continue on working on Monday. And there's different fields where we are going to improve things. In the field of operations, we have some features lined up. We had some complaints of framework being a bit abrupt when shutting down, just closing all connections and shutting everything down. So it has to have a more graceful way of finishing all the work that it's doing and stopping external connections first, etc. We also want to improve exception resilience. Sometimes it happens when you're, for example, in a Kubernetes deployment, you might have a pod that's killed, and it needs a few seconds to start somewhere else. Well, in that time, you don't want to have no handler found for command exceptions, or no destination for this query exception. So we can have Axon Server buffer these situations and say, well, it was here just now, just hold on, it will be back in a few seconds. And then a lot of API and UI improvements just to make the work of ops a lot easier. I'll get back to that in a second. In terms of modeling and design, we also want to make it easier for you to build applications based on Axon. Right? We have the intent to provide some features that we've seen were missing or never implemented. Some of those were never actively thought about. I guess the biggest one is the concept of the dead letter queue. A little while ago, I had a very nice conversation with an architect of one of the larger projects that we have in Belgium, and I saw him in the room earlier. He's right there. Yeah. So I better watch my words. But they had a very interesting way of dealing with exceptions from the tracking event processors. When asynchronously handling events, they had a very nice approach to instead of stopping everything or logging and continuing, they had a very nice way to say, well, this, let's say, substream of events was faulty, so we'll block that, but we'll continue with processing the rest. And when we fix that problem, we'll continue processing that substream. We expect to be able to deliver that in the versions coming up. So I'm not going into too much detail on all these features. If you're interested in some of those, or if you think, hey, something's really missing, there's a reason we have this booth here. There's a couch, so you can sit on it, you can lay down and spew all your problems, and we'll happily discuss those with you. In terms of observability, there's some telemetry that we want to expose and improve. There's already lots of things that you can see. One of the complaints we had was in a larger deployment, they had around 9,000 metrics, and they were wondering what do they all mean. Well, fortunately, there were groups of metrics that were repeated for each application they had, so it wasn't that much work. But still, there's some other metrics that we found that are very useful in measuring or in observing the health of the entire system. And routing statistics are also very nice, so being able to see which applications communicate with which other applications. That is something that if you, like us, like the location transparency, the applications themselves are not aware anymore of where their messages go. But that doesn't mean that in the operations side of things, you're not interested in where they actually flow. Right? So you want to see what the actual message flows are, so you can expect some nice UI visualizations of that would really look nice as a painting on the wall. You can see all the messages flowing. That's our purpose, right? To be a painting on the wall. But wait, there's more. Sorry, this was a real bad attempt to play the annoying TV shows that you always have on Sunday morning where they sell you this useless stuff. Remember that we always talk about this microservices journey, right? The fact that it's a journey. You don't want to go straight into the microservices approach from day one, because there's a death valley in between, and you'll probably digress to build a distributed big ball of mud. The entity services that Alberto spoke about earlier. There's this path, but nowhere in this path does it say you need to manually install something, right? Oh yeah, there's a bunch of software that, depending on how far in the technology line you are, well, this stuff belongs to the era of the dinosaurs, right? Installing software yourself is not really 2019. Fortunately, I can say it's 2019, where 2020 is really closing in, and that's where things get critical, I guess. Nowadays, it's all about this thing, right? We all want to be in the cloud, right? And we've had a lot of questions like, hey, does Axon have a cloud? No, we don't. So what we want to do is put AxonIQ in that cloud as well and provide our services from there to you so that you don't need to install Axon Server yourself. Well, I have a management position now, so I can abstract all the complexity away and say, well, then the only thing we really need is a domain name, right? And then we're done. Well, that's what we did. So I'm quite happy to announce that we will, it's currently in private alpha, but we will be opening up the cloud offering, the SaaS offering of Axon Server to you. And actually, the private beta will start soon, but you can, well, pre-register right now today at the conference, so that you will be sure to, if you want an account to try around with, the beta is free, right? There's no strings attached. You might lose data, but we hope not. It's beta. But you'll be on the top of the list, so you'll be among the first to onboard our cloud solution.